I like that. I mean, technically it wasn't alive because you had, in fact, played the plywood viola at least once or twice.
Well, she never asked me, how many times have you actually played the viola? That never came up, so I didn't volunteer that piece of information.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to OSA Backstage and episode number 13. Coincidentally, Judy Divis' lucky number, which is fantastic because Judy is our guest today. We talk about 38 years with the Omaha Symphony. We talk about when maybe it's okay to tell a lie if it gets you into a viola section, and an accidental infestation of sousaphones. But, we'll get into that. We definitely expected to laugh. Of course, because it's Judy, it was a thoughtful, lovely conversation about using your time on stage to ground yourself. She's a delight. We're going to miss her very much in the orchestra, but we've had 38 awesome years. So we hope that you enjoy and help us celebrate her as she retires at the end of the season. You're going to love it. Enjoy.
And you can hack this up if it doesn't go well, right? Into little itty bitty pieces.
That's exactly right. We have the technology.
We'll fix it in post-production.
That's exactly right. We can rebuild you, Judy.
That's good.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We are almost, you know what? I'm going to say we're ready to go. Hi, hello.
Hi.
Judy, would you please introduce yourself?
I'm Judy Divis, and I'm violist with the Omaha Symphony. I'm retiring this season, at the end of the season, after 38 years.
Okay. So now we're going to math.
It's a lot. It's a lot of years. A lot of music.
It's almost a your son amount of time.
Right. I got here in 1986 and got married and auditioned and got in the orchestra. And then in 87, right after the Christmas, we went on strike. Mm-hmm. And we were on strike until the following October or November. And so I was on the picket line pregnant with my son. He was born in January of 88. So I was walking the picket line very large with my dog Floyd, and yeah, it was interesting times.
That explains a lot about Ben, actually.
Yeah.
In a nutshell. Ben's very politically active and it's very yep.
Oh, he used to kick me so hard in concerts. Oh my gosh, it was painful. I think his foot was right there, and I would just feel him wham. Like,
was that repertoire specific?
Calm down. It was loud. When everything got loud, he reacted. And now the last memory I have of him, because he moved away to Spokane, but I remember Beethoven 9. He loves symphony concerts, but he came and sat in the balcony overlooking the low strings. And at the end of Beethoven 9, Ben is a big guy. He's 6 feet long, tall. He just jumped up like this and just started yelling like he was at a football game or something. It was so great to see that.
That's the energy we need after Beethoven 9. That's the energy I think we all felt at the end of Dvorak 6.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. When that happens, it's just so magical. It's so gratifying, because we can work so hard in rehearsal, but without the audience, they're so much a part of that whole experience for us as well as them,
Oh yeah. And it's so hard to remember sometimes that we've lived with the music for at least 2 weeks, hopefully at least 2 weeks. Right. And so the rehearsal process is just the last 4 or 5 days of bringing it together, but the music we're not walking into the hall on concert night wondering how this goes. And our audience, I feel like, is always starting from scratch. That's a huge trust exercise,
right? To
start from scratch every single time.
That's great. I appreciate that, and I wonder to myself how they're experiencing the music versus what we see and hear. And I've heard so many things from so many audience members about where it takes them and it's almost like it recalibrates the brain and gives you the peace. And it's such a deeply human emotional experience. And when you look at a symphony orchestra, you're looking at so the musicians, the history of their teacher, their teacher's teacher, their school teacher, their friends, their colleagues, blah, blah. The instrument was made by somebody who had a teacher, who had a teacher, who had a teacher back generations. The bow, the bows that we use, same thing. The music that we play, the composers. I mean, what would it be like to compose a piece that is still so powerful after 200 years?
But I think so many of our composers, because all of that is lovely and gorgeous. But we were just talking about Dvorak this last weekend. There's no guarantee of that.
Right.
You don't get to live to see that. I think that's one of the most bizarre space-time continuum things.
Right.
Where we know that Beethoven 9 and this Dvorak 6 period, like we know that that's winning touchdown, football game, elation.
Right.
Beethoven had not a clue. Dvorak had not a clue.
Isn't that something? And I think to myself how deep the root system is for the art form that you're watching, because it's, everybody's family was involved in the, it's pretty amazing. And it's never the same thing twice. The feeling is never the same thing twice. Sometimes when it feels a little bit more settled, it's not as good of a performance. It's really odd. And and I maintain that you can have a whole group of musicians in a room and ask them how a concert went, and you won't even think they were at the same concert.
Yeah.
Because it's all so individual.
Mm-hmm. We were joking when we first started planning this podcast, like, it is very unlike sports in the sense of like, there's no objective that if you do this thing, it was a successful concert. Like there's no winning the concert. And so it would be fun to just sit with a mic outside of the hall, one by one, ask like, Jim Compton, great bassoon solo.
Right.
How to feel in the moment and see like night after night, like, what would his answer be?
As we strive always to do a perfect performance, and we never actually do it. I don't think I've ever done an actual perfect, what I would call perfect performance.
What does that mean when you say?
Well, so in a practice room, it takes an awful lot of isolation and whatever. One of the questions we were going to talk about is the viola part. Mm-hmm. And violas are mainly accompaniment. And so we get a tune thrown in there once in a while, and it kind of comes out of nowhere, and you kind of have to. And so we're constantly trying to figure out how we shape our part to fit whatever we're accompanying and how we can move it around. And when a composer writes sequences and then changes a note to fit the harmonic shape, and how you really have to practice, because you're used to playing patterns. We practice patterns all the time, scales and thirds and all that stuff. And so when somebody deviates from that, it's, so you have to isolate what you're going to work on, how you're going to practice. And the older I get, the more I realize how much I have to plan my time, so that I can't just hammer away at things. I have to really, understand what's happening so that I can use my time wisely. Because physically, the viola is a little uncomfortable because of its size and all that stuff, which we could talk about whenever you want. But, So to prepare something is one thing. It's like when you go to paint a house, you just want to put everything where it needs to be. And then you're free to express the music once you've done that. Then you can make the art happen. Then you can shape something. Then you see this, and then you go, it sort of happens in spite of myself,
Muscle memory? Yeah. Because there's also in the moment, and I'm sure it's the same on the podium, there's also your arms do things they've never done before. Your fingers do things that are unexpected. There's moments where you choose a fingering in the moment. You're like, we have never done that fingering before.
How did I end up here? Like, uh-oh.
I mean, I think it all kind of, it feels like it goes back to, like, it's such an individual experience, but it's also, I think, how we feel going into a performance also affects how we feel coming out of it, whether that's as an audience member or as an orchestra. You know, you might feel great going to performance and feel so much better than your stand partner who just kind of came in with maybe bad news or something and is not going to feel the same, just perceiving their, you know.
That, you know, Serena, that's really interesting because throughout my tenure here, my personal life has been up and down, way up, way down. And this is where I could be grounded because I had to come in and play in spite of that. I mean, you can't say to your audience, well, you know, I didn't learn those two measures because, you know, my car got towed. I mean, you know what I mean? You have the show must go on. So we need to come in and no matter what the attitude is. And I also think that it's incredible how we can communicate with each other with no words. And, you know, the people in the orchestra are my friends and colleagues. I don't always agree with them. I don't agree with the politics a lot or whatever. But when we're there, we have one goal, and that is to do our best and to put on a performance. And so hopefully the audiences keep coming back.
So I just heard a couple of very interesting things because you're absolutely right. It's the same way with the audience members. We've talked about this. They come into the hall. You have no idea where they emotionally, mentally, physically have been, but they're in the hall and they're ready, hopefully ready for you. And the same way with the orchestras, you kind of have to check everything that's happening at the door. But I will say my favorite concerts, the ones that feel the best, aren't just the ones where individually like myself, I feel like I'm firing all cylinders, but there's that collective sense of we are all in this together. And sometimes it's something really heavy or something really bright and vivacious. But if you feel everybody kind of subconsciously put the self to the side and just rise to the occasion, though I think the audience feels that more than perfect execution, more than anything else. It's we're meeting you as a whole.
Right. That energy is so spectacular and so singular to our art form. And many times it is the how much great art has come out of horrible times in our history. How much great art has come out of individual people and musicians when the chips are really down. Because this is what we have. And it saved my life more than once. And I would venture to say that probably I'm not alone in that. I feel like there's a huge human connection with the composer, with the conductor, with the musicians, with the audience. It is something that is so inexplicable. And in this time, especially, the unity of that, the message of that is so important, is yes, we can do this together. And we accomplish so much more that way.
Do you remember your first orchestra concert? Like, do you remember the first, so speaking of roots and like that emotional connection, do you remember the first time you fell in love with an orchestra?
You know, I was thinking about that because I grew up in Hamden, Connecticut, which is a suburb of New Haven. And we had the New Haven Symphony, but we never did concerts for youth. We never got to sit next to symphony members like we do here, which is incredible. When I saw that, I was like, whoa, this is great. My father was studying opera. So he had a full-time job, but he got this old upright piano and he was trying to learn to sing opera. And so that's kind of what I had in my house all the time. I still remember that record of Pagliacci, a Caruso record, Pagliacci the clown banging the bass drum that's just etched in my brain. He listened to it all the time, and he tried to transcribe everything by hand because it wasn't quite his key. And he was also an artist. He'd gone to art school, so his manuscript was so cool. I used to watch him do that by the hour. But I think one of the very first times that I was really washed away was here in Omaha. And before that, I was a violinist, which I
forgive you.
Nobody wants to pay to hear me do that. But it was good, but it was close. But, not really what I wanted to do. But I didn't, I think that I, at that time, was so in my own head trying to learn stuff that I wasn't open to it. When I got here and the orchestra went on strike, and then I was pregnant with my first child, and that was difficult physically for me. And then we didn't know what was going to happen, and we're picketing outside, and, I'm watching board members walk into the building where we're picketing, and I'm like, this is crazy. Mm-hmm. And then when we all got back together to play, that I remember. That was a major deal. And one of my favorite memories is when we came back from COVID, and we were playing Tchaikovsky's Serenade for Strings. And Thomas had us play the first 4 measures section by section. And we were all sitting alone with our masks, I get chills just thinking of that, because it was so, I missed that energy that we have on stage with each other,
That was also when we first came back from COVID, and we were originally supposed to have a few concerts outside, and then the weather didn't permit it. So we were able to come inside, which seemed like a huge deal. But that we got a message, it was either on Facebook or something, but someone had come to see us do Beethoven 3, and she was just crying the whole time. It was this realization of how much we had all collectively missed this, and I think we had kind of shoved that need as far back as we could until it was possible again. Yeah,
it's something you don't even realize until it hits you. I mean, I remember walking in my car after that concert, and audience members were coming up to me in tears. Mm-hmm. They're so grateful that we were back. It's amazing. And when you think about just things in history and what happened and why somebody wrote what they wrote, or why, that it's always got to do with human emotion. And that's what art is. I mean, that's what we're doing. And I think it's amazing to feel a connection with, how many people does the hall hold?
1975.
Yeah. People that maybe maybe you don't. I mean, when does that happen? I guess football games. I don't know.
So that's the dream, is to sell out Husker Stadium.
Yeah, right.
Beethoven 9. Okay. I want to go back, though, and touch. You just magically went from violin to viola, and I know there's more to it than...
Yeah, just like, okay, so...
There's alto clef involved.
I have a horrible confession to make, which is, yeah. All right, so I got here, it was September-ish, and I was going to audition for Omaha Symphony on violin, but that audition wasn't happening for a little bit. In the meantime, I went to Lincoln and auditioned in Lincoln Symphony, for Lincoln Symphony. And then I left, and I was leaving, and the person who came in after me, who I won't mention, played way better than I did. And I was going, I'm not going to get this job. So I told a little fib to the personnel manager and said, I also play the viola, which really meant I had a viola. It was not the greatest instrument. And I really only played it a couple times, but I loved it. But I just loved it. I wanted to switch in school. My teacher said no, So I got viola music for the first concert. At Romeo and Juliet Overture, Harris Symphony. And I sat next to my stand partner was Matt Naughton, who's, fantastic. And I never looked back. I came home from that rehearsal and that's it. I sold my violin, this is where I belong. And then
even with alto clef, because that's an abomination.
That took that took a little while, So what happened was that Christmas was right before the orchestra went on strike, and the fourth chair violist in the corps did not come back from Christmas break. Things were very different in those days, and so they needed somebody, and the principal violist wanted me to sit there. So I did. And I had to work very hard to learn that clef. I mean, that's a lot of practicing. I got a hold of an instrument, a real instrument, not the plywood one that I auditioned on, which was really hilarious. It just sounded like a troll. And it made me laugh so hard. I just had so much fun. So I did audition on the stage at Joslin with everybody in the audience and this plywood viola that sounded, that's what it was. It wasn't really that bad, but it was pretty funny. That's what I was doing. I'm like, this is great. Like, when could this ever happen in my life? So I just wanted to sit in the back. I was married. I was going to have kids. I just wanted to sit in the back. I kept getting pushed into the front, and then I really liked it. And so I just kept on. It was a lot of work, but I just love it. I just really enjoy it. I love the color. I love the little tricks you have to do to get the kind of sound you want. Violas are really temperamental.
I love everything about that, and
except the lie part.
No, it's got.
Look,
it's Jamie.
Yes. In seventh grade, Jamie Pham went from playing flutes to playing percussion because she was told that she could get out of class if she auditioned for the band.
So the audition meant you show up having never touched a percussion instrument.
That's my kind of audition.
I'm just saying. And she became a professional percussionist.
Yeah. So
this is... technically it wasn't a lie because you had, in fact, played the plywood viola at least once or twice.
Well, she never asked me, how many times have you actually played the viola? That never came up, so I didn't volunteer that piece of information.
And, I play cello, but you should see Greg Clinton's face when I play cello. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's everything about that is tremendous, and you just never look back. But I feel like viola is a wonderful instrument for you, which is not a viola joke. It's just it makes everything around it better.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. We're used to viola jokes,
You have some really good ones.
I do have some good ones. I mean, there's the what's the difference between a violin and viola? The viola burns longer. That's terrible. Or what's the difference between a violin and a viola? A viola holds more beer. That's terrible. Mm-hmm. But you want to hear my favorite one? It's kind of long.
Yes.
You know this one.
Yep.
Okay. So I should probably preface this by saying the poor violas somehow are the brunt of many jokes. And if you want to do something fun, Google viola jokes and you will see a whole list come up. And I think it's because back in the day, in Haydn's time maybe, the viola players were the people who couldn't really play the violin that well. And so I'm thinking that's what it is, but I've heard that.
Can I just interject really fast with the idea that you're bad at this, so let's give you a more uncomfortable, more unwieldy instrument to deal with and see if you do better?
With gut strings.
The logic's not great, but continue.
So when you measure an instrument, a string instrument, let's just say I have a violin, you turn it around and you're going to measure from where the neck meets the body, and then you measure down to the end button or just the size of the body of the instrument, not including the neck or scroll or anything like that. Violin is a standardized size of 14 inches. It varies a little bit from maker to maker, but that's basically where it landed. The viola can go anywhere from 15 inches to 17 and a half, 18 inches, which my viola is 15 and a half. So every time you add an inch, you can see where my arm is going to end up. Mm-hmm. In order to be acoustically comparable to a violin or a cello, the viola body length would have to be around 20 inches. So you have to have, 6'9" people play that, And then the body itself, makers have done various things to try to get. Mm-hmm. So when you look in the orchestra, you'll see so many different sizes of viola. They're really a lot. And it's all kind of personalized to what fits and what's comfortable. And what's remarkable to me is how different the voices are. Because from one viola to the next, they're just, I can pick them out. I can hear, each person. And it's so personalized to what you personally like, Some people like a more bright A string so that it will penetrate through, and other people like more of a muted color. So anyway, that's where that comes from, because the size of the instrument. And then violas, we just get accused of clunking along. So anyway, that's my preface to the joke. So here's the joke. So this guy is walking down the street, and he remembers that it's his anniversary, and he doesn't have a present for his wife. So he is in deep trouble. And he happens to be walking by this hospital, and he sees a sign, and it says, "Brains for sale." So he says, "Ooh, that'd be a great present." So he goes in there and he finds the doctor that's responsible for this. I think I'm telling it differently. Anyway, and he gets to the doctor and he says, "So I'm interested in these brains." And the doctor says, "Oh, you're in luck. We have 3 right now. And by the way, installation is included in the price of the brain."
Very important.
Yeah, because, So he says the first brain we have belonged to a mathematician, and that brain is going for $10,000. The second brain belonged to a rocket scientist, and that brain is going for $25,000. And the third brain belonged to a professional viola player, and that brain is going for $50,000. And the guy says, "How come the violist brain is so expensive?" And the doctor said, "Well, it's like brand new. It's never been used." But I'll be here all week. Tip your server.
So I first heard that joke. It was summer of 2021. We were doing a chamber music series, and it was like 108 degrees outside, and there were rolling blackouts happening through Omaha. So we moved the chamber concert out of the now powerless concert hall and into the coffee shop where there was like enough natural light, and the air conditioning was off. And then on top of that, the door alarm went off between some of the pieces. And so we were stalling for time until we could get
about the door alarm.
So we're stalling for time while Jay's out getting ice water so that none of our patrons pass out. The manager, we're trying to find the manager so we can turn off the alarm. And Judy's up there just cranking out viola jokes. It was a tight 10.
It was fun.
It was really good.
Wow.
Oh, man. Okay. On a more serious note, you're absolutely right. Viola is just this incredibly... Bass is similar in the sense that there's no real standardized...
I was going to ask you, yeah.
Yeah, I have a 7/8 size instrument, and Nate's is considered a 3/4 size instrument. And if you look at the last photo taken by Juliet Yoshida, his bass is significantly bigger than mine. So everybody's...
So you think they're making that up? I mean, come on. Yes. I played a viola that was 16 3/8 inch. It's just an odd measurement. I threw out my hip trying to play that instrument. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's all about angles.
Mm-hmm. Have you tried one of those ergonomic violas?
The ones that are kind of,
or that have only
Like a
one
cutout.
side, like a cutout.
Yeah. I've tried a lot of different things, but I like the one I landed on. I think for me, and this is so, I got a lot of trouble with my ears the past couple of years, and I ended up with surgery, and so I am losing my hearing. And I'm not exactly sure they put my ear back in the right place, because when I wear my glasses, they're a little
lopsided.
He did say, we make the incision right where we'd give you a facelift. And I said, can you do me a solid, while you're in there, just on the one side, then I could pose that way. It would be great. But I used to, when I played all the time, and I saw color all the time when I played, and notes to me like F sharp purple, C string is rich green. I mean, I just see I feel the color. That doesn't happen anymore, unfortunately. And the tone of my viola is not the same. I can't tolerate it under this ear. I have a condition also that the little bones in my ear are open. So they closed one side and they want to do the other side, but I don't know if I could take that because it involves kind of lifting my brain up and repairing that, and it took me a long time to recover. It's been almost a year, and it's a lot different. But I find that it is improving generally, and I can be in public now. I can go to the store. I can drive my car. I was having seizure reactions like this. The sound it's devastating when that happens. But I think what it brought into sharp relief for me was how wonderful this gift is that we all share, and how much it saves us over and over and over again. And no matter what, there it is. We are here. And
I wanted to ask about this. You just remain, this is part of the reason why I think viola suits you so well, because there is a very optimistic, gung-ho quality about that section. Like you have to be gung-ho to be a violist. Like you said, you very rarely get the melody. When you do, it's often a surprise. I loved it in Dvorak when that just came singing out, or even just the opening was so fun. It's like, that's a viola moment.
It's just, it pops out of nowhere. And if you're just looking at the chart, it's hard to tell that that's where you're going to be exposed. You don't know. They hide it in there for you.
They don't want you to, it's like looking at a predator, like you can't look at it straight on.
Yeah, exactly.
But that optimism, we've worked together now for as long as I've been in Omaha, and you have never not been optimistic and enthusiastic. So how do you, I don't know if how do you hold that on to that is the right question, but how do we pass that on to other people?
I see that I have successfully fooled you into thinking that I have a good attitude. When most of the time I'm sitting over there with a good grin on my face thinking of nasty things to say. No, that's not true.
So you're lying just like you lied to get into the viola section.
Bald-faced lie.
All right, so the moral of the story is lie constantly.
And grin a lot,
Well, it makes people feel great, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So
keep it up.
To lie. Now, we're not advocating this, those of you who
I am. Fake it.
So
Fake it.
Violas have to be Teflon because, this is what usually happens to us. It's the last rehearsal, everybody's dead, and the conductor says, violas, I want to hear this. And it's this really hard place, and there you are, dead meat, and you gotta and then they say, one more time, and you just sit there, and then the violins start looking at their watch, and I think so. I feel like Dani. I mean, as human beings, at this point in my life, I can look back on this, and all you really have is time. That's what you have. If you're lucky, you can retain your memory along with that time. So how you choose to spend that time, that's really important to think about. And I like to spend the time having people find the positive in a life that doesn't always show the positive, but it's always there. The human spirit is just so incredibly resilient. And you can see, I mean, I like seeing a crocus come up from a parking lot, crack in a pavement kind of thing. To me, it's just who we are. And when you can use music to pull something out of a student that they didn't know they had, when you can show them something and the light goes on and you see that happen, there's nothing like that. That is a wonderful thing to see. And when they realize maybe they can do something, maybe they can be happy, Some people, it doesn't take too much. You just show them and they go, that's great. Which is why I'm going to turn this to why I started good. Can I talk about good?
Yes,
vibration?
please talk.
Okay.
So
this is my, I am president right now of the Omaha Chamber Music Society, and Dani was my predecessor, and she's the greatest ever. And as Dani stood up in a donor event and talked about our education program, and then an anonymous donor wrote a check that I talked to the donor, and we used that as seed money to start Good Vibrations. This was back in January of 2018. And I had noticed that through my work with the Omaha Symphony in Music Mentors, we had several kids playing on broken violins. I mean, they weren't the ones that the school owned because they have their own repair people who fix those, but the ones that the kids owned. So sometimes a family member, here's grandma's violin, or here's your quinceañera, here's a violin for you. But they don't have the money in the budget to maintain that instrument. So that's where we started. And then KVNO said, let's do a used instrument drive. And I thought maybe we'd get 20 instruments. We got 80.
It took over Judy's basement.
Yeah, it did. It was like, what in the heck? And then we got there were instruments of all kinds. And so I work with Sarah Klug at the Flatiron Luthier Cooperative. She's our luthier. And also Chris Nielsen and Alex Reza and the techs at Dietz and Schmidt and wherever we can find people that will help. We take those donated instruments, we repair them and distribute them to kids that would never have a chance to have a decent instrument or one that is in working condition. We also repair the ones that they do own. If they happen to own something that we can fix so that it sounds better. We also now we've expanded and we can do lessons. We're paying for private lessons. And I've placed more than 13 pianos.
Which is almost impossible.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it's in the refugee and immigrant community work with Heartland Integration Center. So since we started, we've gone over 500 instruments that we've been able to do that. And I personally am very grateful to this community for the support of that initiative, because it's a game changer for a student to have an instrument in working order. My father made sure that happened. We didn't have a lot of money, but he made sure that we had lessons and that my violin was in good shape. And if I needed a different one, he moved heaven and earth to come up with that money. Then that was not easy. And so I sort of had dedicated that to him, because when a kid, when they, every day they open this case and here's this violin that's all beat up, and they think to themselves, grandma used to play this, or, the other kids have so much nicer, and I'm trying to eat lunch, I'm in Title I, and then we get a hold of it and give it back to them. The message is clear. We clean it all up. We replace the bow, rosin, cleaning rag, fix the case. I've glued my fingers together with super glue countless times. I hate to even talk about that. But they have something when they get it back, they just go like they know somebody cares about them. And that's the message.
There's also so much. This is one of the reasons why I love like things like music mentors and this program is there's so much you just don't know until you have seen it for yourself or tried it. You don't know that a bow needs more than 5 bow hairs until you have played fully haired bow. You just don't know how easy it could be. And one of the reasons why I love Omaha so much is everybody, all the teachers we've worked with are usually on that same level of enthusiasm and optimism. Like they're here, they want to learn, they want to do better by their kids. It's amazing. They just don't have enough hours in the day to master everything. So when you can come in and be like, just show a bass kid, it's okay. No, you don't want to hold that like a violin. No, you need your pinky for other things. It's too heavy. Just showing them a few things and then they see it for the first time and seeing it and feeling it.
Hearing it. When they hear, we have a team of string players that goes in and play and sits in with the kids we perform and then sit in. And Dani and we started there a long time ago. We were in that team. And when a kid hears the sound that you make on the instrument and you're sitting right next to them, just like our music mentors, they're like, what? You know? And I heard through the grapevine that you let the orchestra teachers conduct while in music mentors these days. Is that true?
Yeah.
That is brilliant. That's what we do too, because I think that's where you can really make a difference. You get the teacher involved, right?
Get the teacher involved. I think a lot of the time when we see them, they're at a point in the cycle where they're going to perform the music soon. And so, I mean, not only is it, okay, what are the students used to? What are they working with? And what are they going to have at the end of the performance? You know, none of us are going to be there. We're only there for that moment. So to have the teacher, okay, so is there anything that I can do with the teacher to help that besides what, you know, you are all doing one-on-one? One of my favorite things to ask the students to say, I make them say 5 things to the mentors, you know, your name, year in school, how long you've been playing your instrument, all it's fine. But it's the whether or not you take lessons, which I think is really important. And then the favorite piece, just to get them to talk about something really positive and joyful. But it's the whether or not you take lessons part that I think is really key to just kind of say, okay, well, what do we need to work on here? Is it just that they've never actually had a lesson on basic setup and even that's going to improve? Or they've never had a lesson, which means they've never heard their teacher play the violin and you go, oh, well, you know, this is going to be the first time this student hears a professional string sound next to them. I think that just starts off on such a positive, you know, foot. And then for the teacher as well, then he doesn't have to explain to everyone, well, oh, these students are at this level and all that stuff. It's just, let's give the students as much individual time as possible. And then whatever I can do with the teacher so that he can then ideally improve. And
I'm thrilled to hear that, because I feel like you have to see what their tempo is. You have to see what their idea of the balance is. You have to see what have they done so far. And that makes perfect sense. And also kids freak out when you get somebody new up there. They're uncomfortable. And they're uncomfortable when, we got all these people coming.
Yeah.
And so I think that when they see the teacher, maybe the teacher's a little uncomfortable. They kind of, okay, this is okay. We can do this.
Well, it's the phenomenon. Have you ever, so I've run this by my husband and he does not understand this metaphor because his car is always immaculate. But have you ever picking up someone for the first time and you look around your car in the split second before they get into the car and realize that you have somehow been driving a complete wreck and had not a clue? There's something about bringing someone new into your space that suddenly makes you very self-conscious about every single thing that
or of your driving. All of a sudden you go, oh, do I brake soon enough? Am I looking in all the mirrors enough at the right, am I, every time, and you kind of know you are. And as a kid, you're like, no, I'm playing all the right notes, I think, but there's that kind of fear where someone's watching. So nobody's been watching you since, your driving teacher, I guess, which.
Yes, having that barrier, like just take down as many of these self-conscious barriers as you can from the get-go. And a big part of that is being proud of the instrument that you spend so much time with. I don't know if a lot of people outside of music have the same relationship with an inanimate object that musicians have, where you love this thing that is sometimes very good to you and sometimes betrays you, and you are really just hoping every time you open the case that you're on the same page for the day. And if you don't know that something is supposed to be better, you just know it's hard. It's really hard to build that relationship with that instrument, and it is like the hardest part about practicing is getting my bass out of the case every single time, and the moment it's my hands, just like, oh, right, okay, like this is part of, you and I are part of the same collective person, this is what we do. And if it's too hard to play, I don't think you ever get to build that connection.
Right. And then what you just said gives it a whole new dimension to watching the orchestra as well.
There's a polka something happening on stage.
What's going on?
There's tuba players on stage. Oh, that's a first. Okay. Interrupted by Sousaphone is a new one for us.
There's a first time for everything, I guess.
There's more coming.
I know.
Oh.
So when I saw 2, I thought there's going to be more of this.
They all show up. That's another viola joke. You can't even leave a viola in your car.
Oh, right. You can't leave the viola in your car because when you come back, someone will have broken in to put more violas in your car.
That's not even fun. You have to cut that part out. Edit that.
Well, I'll think about it.
You need to edit that.
We have an infestation of sousaphones happening on stage.
We can edit this whole section out.
I was wondering this, after this year, will you be doing more of this kind of work?
Yes.
That's kind of what you'll...
So, I had 3 kids and I made them all play string instruments. I was growing my own quartet, and then they all stopped after high school. And so then I had these really nice instruments. And I think that a lot of people have done that. A lot of people said, oh, my son wants to play the saxophone. I'm going to buy him this really nice Yamaha. Kid plays it for a little while, then doesn't play it, and there it sits in the house. And it's not like you want to just sort of give them to, whatever. Mm-hmm. You want somebody who will play it because it has sentimental value. Your kids played it. It's something, or your mom played it, or grandma played it, or whatever. And if you give it to us, we fix it and we give it to someone who really appreciates it. And we've also been able to tell people, your instrument went here, your instrument's gone here, this kid did this, And it kind of, Good Vibrations just does this thing on its own. It just, people come to me and say, we could do this, we could do that. And we do it. We find a way to do it. And I think that it can go everywhere. I would love to see that because we even have tubas. We have a sousaphone. And somebody donated.
You have a donated sousaphone?
Yeah, it's huge. It takes up Jay's whole studio. Yeah, it's like this big.
So if we ever need it, we'll pay him doubling.
I don't even think he can hold that thing up, but that's okay.
First of all, we need a concerto for sousaphone. No one needs that. No, I take it back. No one needs a concerto for sousaphone. I'm so sorry.
You will decide when that gets played, Dani.
Omaha Symphony, 2030, 2031. Oh, God forgive me. Oh, somehow, so You know what? I don't know if you're going to be able to hear the sousaphones in the background, and that's okay. This is live podcast recording, so it's fine. Judy, would you say, but in all seriousness, would you say that this is what you have become most proud of in your time in Omaha, or is it, do you find your symphony tenure and your Good Vibrations OCMS tenure kind of run concurrently?
Pride is a funny thing for me. I am very proud. I'm proud of my kids. I'm proud of my life. I'm proud of this legacy. I'm proud of really all of us because it never, as you know, doesn't happen in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. People jump on board and help this out all the time. I'm getting, sousaphones. I think that as a legacy at this time in my life, I would love Good Vibrations to continue well after I'm gone, maybe 200 years after I'm gone. And I think it could go everywhere. I think, we've been getting instruments to the Dominican Republic, Haitian refugees. We're trying to figure out if we can send some to California if people's instruments have burned up in the fire. People, this is, I love talking to donors about, where did this instrument come from? Oh, my father, blah, 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 or grandpa, blah, blah, or my sister, or whatever. And it always means something. You do have a relationship with the instrument.
Mm-hmm. Even if it's short, even if it's just a tiny amount of time, that's still, I think, a core memory. It's like, oh, this was when I attempted clarinet.
You're holding it. It's so personal. Mm-hmm. You're holding it. And then you're trying to read music and trying to get your brain to do something it doesn't want to do. And really, who wants to sit like this for hours and hours? That's not natural. It's challenging. But it's also, with that challenge comes the reward. And that's a really important message with our art, is with that challenge comes an amazing reward, like we felt last weekend. When that happens, this is why I put in all this time.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite Omaha Symphony concert that we've played?
Well, I'll tell you about the first Omaha Symphony concert I ever saw.
Okay.
Because it's funny.
Yes.
So it was that same September I came to see a concert, and it was Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony. And it's in the slow movement. And without mentioning any names, I'm going to talk about our percussionist who was thinking maybe things were getting a little slower than they needed to be. And so this is what I see in the back. He's looking at his watch.
For those of you on audio only, Judy's doing a hell of an impression of someone whose time has slowed down so much their watch has actually stopped.
He was just like listening to it and couldn't believe it. And he was standing up because he's in the back, waiting. I'm like, I have to play in this group. This is like the best thing I've ever seen.
What advertisement game? Come audition.
It's just the human element of that. Like, okay, this is nice, guys, but I gotta go. So, can we move it along?
Meanwhile, the poor bassoonist is just finishing. They've waited years to play Check 4.
Right. I can't wait.
Everything is just the stress. This is his moment.
And behind them, just like, my legs fell asleep.
Dinner.
I remember there was somebody I could see in my early years, from my stand. And it was never distracting, but they definitely had crossword or word finders or sort of things that they could. They looked very studious, but they had a good time during tacit movements. And like, I can't exercise my legs, I can exercise my brain. Oh boy.
How about thinking, I hope I'm not making a face right now, that kind of thing. I hope I'm not doing
Yes.
That. So but that's interesting. But I just want you to know that I appreciate you when you're on the podium, because every conductor is different, and I appreciate different things about different conductors. What I love to see is the expression on your face, which the audience never gets to see. And that is the most welcoming. It's that face that you're making right now. It's welcoming. It's like, I can't wait to hear this sound. I love what I do. Even if you don't feel that, that's what's coming across. So good for you. And it means that we are more free to express, there's a big difference between this and that. You immediately react to what somebody does in human behavior and facial expression and body language and everything. It happens instantaneously. And it changes a lot for us to see somebody who is enjoying what they're doing.
Thank you.
So I really want you to know that. I don't get to play for you very often, but I really enjoyed my time with you. So thank you.
I feel like seconded. And I feel like Judy Divis, the moral of your tenure is find what you need at the hall. So it's not necessarily checking your ego at the door, but finding what you need on stage with your colleagues, wherever that stage might be. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I dabble in painting a little bit. When you're building color, when you're building texture, and you're building, that's what we're doing. And so everybody's personality is part of it. We can't all be the same. We're not going to all be the same. But that's the joy of what we do. This particular group that we have right now is just stellar. I mean, I enjoy it so much. And I've had the honor of having the best seat in the house for 38 years. It's just incredible. I get to hear my friends and colleagues do this amazing thing and be part of it. It's great.
Well, I love how positive the energy always is coming from you. And I hope that, when you talk about that reciprocal energy, that you found that to be true.
Yeah, I do. I find it from the audience. I'll leave you with one thought my mother said. She was dying of Alzheimer's at the time, so she was about 90. And they came to do an assessment of her. And they asked her things like, who's the president? And she thought it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And that they wanted to know where she thought she was, and she wasn't. It wasn't close. And then they said, Doris, a woman said, what's your goal? What are your goals? And my mother, who was a very goal-oriented person, looked up in a moment of complete lucidity and said, my goal is to wake up tomorrow and do a little better than I did today. And sometimes I succeed and sometimes I don't. And then she just sat back. And I thought, thanks, Mom. That is an amazing lesson.
Yeah. We can't top it.
I know.
I want to ask you the question, Judy. It's like, do we end there? I want to end on a less serious note,
okay,
because that was just so tremendously lovely. We usually ask everybody, if you had 30 minutes, no consequences, you could steal the mariachi sousaphone that we're hearing over the speaker system right now. But you could do anything you wanted. So not just instrument in this case. You could conduct, you could be in charge of the lights, you could be backstage. If you could do anything revolving the Omaha Symphony, what would you do?
Play the contrabassoon.
Yeah? Have you ever tried?
No.
Okay.
Without a doubt, that would be the instrument that I would love to play. I just love that instrument. And I get to hear Karen Sandine sit right behind me and play that. And every time I'm just like, what a great instrument that is.
Okay,
We could try. We could make that happen.
yes, I feel like
that's entirely within the realm of possibility here.
Oh my gosh.
here's your retirement bouquet. Here's your
And-
retirement
Here's the contra bassoon.
And here's your contra bassoon. And somebody will lug it out to the car for you because it's a sofa with a handle.
It is almost literally a sofa with a handle.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that's more unwieldy than a viola, it would be contra bassoon. Judy Divis, thank you so much for doing this.
Please.
Congratulations on
And my
38,
pleasure. My pleasure.
38 years. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Contra bassoon, Judy Divis.
Who
We
knew
can
it?
make that happen.
Make it happen.
You guys are going to do
Make that
that?
happen.
Oh,
Why
my
not? I think, hey, Karen.